Yeah, let's see. This was a splinter group of digital domain guys again. Pat Mcclung got the job, and they started up a company, Bay Effects, I think they called it, and it was just there for the duration of the film. And the miniatures got split between two houses, between us and DreamQuest, and pretty much split down the middle as far as I understood. You know, they did half, we did half. You know, we didn't really split up sequences too much. We both did similar kinds of sequences. Yeah, we spent a few months building a lot of models, building some 20th scale shuttles, 20th, 12th, and then Vision Crew built a quarter scale that we actually took out to the runway at Kennedy Space Center, and rolled it out on the runway that the shuttle actually lands on. It was kind of cool. A bunch of the VIPs around NASA would come around in a car, and if they're coming around in a car, you know there's somebody, because they don't let just anybody drive a car around there. And I've always loved rockets. I always wanted to go out to the Space Center, so that was made kids out of us again. Let's see, yeah, we were on that show. That one lasted about 14 months overall, I think, from beginning to end. We built a quarter scale armadillo vehicle. That was a 12-wheel vehicle that Fraser Effects built a large-scale, a full-scale version of it, and just a real working driving vehicle. And so we did a quarter-scale version of it to take out to the Badlands, and crew of guys went out there and got a lot of great shots going along some mesas and over a mesa. That's right, there was one shot it actually went over. We were watching dailies one day, and beautiful shot of it coming out to the edge of a cliff. You know, lights are on, blazing bright, and it does a little turn, and it goes off the cliff. And then you see all these giant legs come in, trying to catch it, and it came back to us. The front end of it shattered, and had to piece that back together real fast. But apparently, Michael Bay was back there yelling, "Left, left!" And well, he was seeing camera left when they were thinking left, and so they did their left, but that was over the cliff. He really meant right. So good times, good times. Did a nice little sequence of landing it was the 12th scale shuttle on a miniature asteroid set, and had a bunch of breakaway glass and Picotex kind of products, that little resin, shatterable resin that would come down and crash through and do a little skid at the end. That worked out real nice. Richard Stutzman set up a cable winch system. It was all computer controlled, so they could actually program in, you know, the move and have it drop down at a certain point and just how it would do it. So it was something that it's nice to have something that you can build up like that rather than trying to puppeteer it and hope you get it right. You know, you actually work it out, and it looked real nice.
On Armageddon with the resin, you know, me and Jerry Mcclung, Pat Mcclung's brother, you know, we had these little elements, hot elements with pans, and taking this breakaway glass and melting it down, and while that's melting, we take this not saran wrap, but aluminum foil, and create a cone effect, crinkly cone effect, and then we pour a shot of molten breakaway in it, and as we dump it out, we're rotating it, so when it finally cools and solidifies, we could gently remove the aluminum foil, and then you have this very delicate glass spike. And these are the spikes that the shuttle on Armageddon crashes through in that one scene. So playing with molten glass, we got burned several times, but if you know how to position yourself, you tend not to get burned so much, but you did have a bucket of ice water nearby.
And I think one of the more difficult shots, and it turned out really good, was a mixing of a lot of scales. Let's see, it was the Mir space station. We were shooting that on motion control. It was about an 11-foot tall model. I think it was like 96th scale or something like that. And there was a little porthole, and they wanted to do this shot where the camera's looking in this porthole. It is actually inside with the actor. And this Russian actor, they pull out and do this big move out through the porthole, and then they kind of pan or boom down, and they're looking at the whole space station, and piece flies by, you know, as it's kind of turning. And so we ended up mixing that 96th scale with the with the actor who's full scale and the background behind him, which was quarter scale. and everything's in a dynamic move and multi-axis dynamic move, and trying to get everything to marry together right, match together. It was a lot of brain scratching, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. But it was a beautiful shot. It worked out really nice. And another shot, another show where I learned a lot from Pat Mcclung on working miniatures. Just the little touches that you put on a miniature to get it to sell as in the scale that it's supposed to be. Little things like Michael Bay liked a lot of shots, dynamic shots where he'd swing the camera through and like a solar panel would swing by, or an arm of the space station would go by, and so putting little glints of oil out. I'd always have a little bit of oil or something that I just put a little dot here and there, just so you'd get a sparkle on something. Because in miniatures, when if something sparkles, it's going to be a giant sparkle. And that's the problem with using miniatures. You need to break things up, and even reflections and a little sparkle has to be brought down. And so you'd always use something small that wouldn't take up too much length. So a little dot of oil was enough to keep the sparkle confined to just that one little spot. And also just little shading, carding, where you hold a card up and you create a little panel line, but just a little soft spraying on that. Those kind of details. He was real good at just adding just a little something right there, and all of a sudden it looks big.
I understand a lot about all the disciplines, partly because I came up through places like BOSS and Apogee and even ILM that had all the divisions originally, the art departments, the model shops, the stage, special effects, animation. I was exposed to all these different it's like a mini movie when you're on a set of a movie. It's sort of the same thing at these companies. Now that I supervise, I have the studio people, the producers, the director, sometimes the writers will get involved, and the editors will get involved, and I have to sort of find a happy ground for everybody to make them happy, and it can get very stressful.
We did a shot where it was a dual liftoff, where there were 2 shuttles and 2 gantries, and we had one gantry we had I think we got from somebody else, and for the other one we just kind of made this tube and put model trees, the little framework that the model parts are on, and just peeled that off and just filled it with model trees and all. It was just really a silhouette of a model gantry, and and that was able to be thrown together in a day, and we lit it, just filled it with Christmas lights. Just took strings of lights and just planted it through, and it's not going to be well lit. We're not going to be close to it. It's a distant shot. It's a silhouette shot, and for lighting, they had this tree full of these mirrors on little positionable gimbals, and so they just shot a bright light at this little tree of mirrors and just pointed all these little beams of light from that. And that created all these little spots of light, which is like what a large thing. If you shining a light on a big object like that, you'd get a small area lit.
One of the takes where the shuttle is careening, it's out of control and it's corkscrewing in and it's careening and bouncing off structure. The shuttle finally hits the asteroid and starts tumbling and breaking apart. And so after the shot was done, and the pyro guys run up on stage to check to see if everything's okay, well, me and another model maker and a painter decided, let's get a photo. We're never going to see this again. So we hurry up on stage. You get down behind the cockpit, and we're smiling, and then the photo is snapped, and later on we find out there was a live bomb in that nose piece that didn't go off. I think what it was, one of the lanyards that pulled the contacts broke during the crash, so the safety or the contact never got pulled and created the bomb. Well, yes, we didn't know at the time, but we got the shot, so that was pretty cool. We got a picture with it. Alan Fouché was the head of the model shop on that, and so George Trimmer was also the designer for the model shop too. He was making up drawings and so forth. So he and I were collaborating together. And what he was looking for was something that didn't look like a traditional aircraft landing gear, more something organic and creature-like, and so and really a elaborate articulated foot. And Alan sent it over the stage, and from what I understand, they actually used it, if not duplicated it, for a quick insert shot. Worked on the power model for the mirror. Did a little work on that. That was actually one of the early jobs. To backtrack, Touchstone was in charge of that, and so the first few model makers were hired to make this mirror miniature, and we were to work on one of the stages at the Disney Studios. And so we took all these tank parts and broke them off the trees. So you had boxes of tank parts, ship model parts, and airplane model parts. And sure enough, Star Wars model parts were there too. And we had a welded pipe grid. You know, George Trimmer said these are what the sprues of the mirror is going to look like. It's close to it, but it's more fantasy. And welded with this light pipe grid. And then we slid on these basic round PVC tubes that are your rough shapes and slid those on. And from there, we just spent hours gluing on parts and running little pipes. And when you run these miniature pipes, you actually have to run it with a purpose. You just can't go A to B and so forth. And so with that in mind, we went ahead and detailed all these sub-model, these sub-sections. And then each subsection was then painted up, because it's easier to paint the subsections, and then slid onto the mirror miniature and then put on stage, and we shot that. Later on, we had to make a larger version of the mirror for a pyro. That's where it gets blown up. And this is lightweight aluminum foil glued to lightweight plastic Centra rings, and then carefully detailed to where you get enough information that it looks like the mirror. It's very basic in detail. It's not very detailed. It's just enough for the audience member to recognize what it is, and then boom, it's gone. And then Ian Hunter's company, at the time, Hunter Gratzner, they did the top of the Chrysler building, plummeting to earth. And that was a big piece in itself. Pretty impressive.
Armageddon was high-end, so we had super pros on every level. And that was a miniature of the mirror. It was like one of the last times you were going to see a space miniature. And when it's something that already exists, that's a special challenge. And blowing that thing up over and over again was so fun. Because it popped one module at a time. That was a good job, Armageddon. That's the best part. Because it means we did it right. It means I'm done. Walk away. Well, that's one of the greatest things to hear. Okay, walk away. It means it's finished and it's ready for camera. It's ready to blow up. That's what it's for. We're building it to blow it up. Not to blow it up means we screwed up.